So happy to see everybody this morning. I am Henry Millett, and I will be your service leader today. You can see the sun rising behind me. It is the summer solstice, I'm told, which will occur at 11:31 this evening, I believe. So if you're into that sort of thing, it's good. But you know, the solstice is the longest day of the year. So today you have an even more opportunity to enjoy all the good things in the world and have a good time and be compassionate and celebrate all those things that we celebrate here at UUCLC. My pronouns, by the way, are he, his, and him. Happy Father's Day. All you fathers, I hope you have a good day. Happy Gay Pride Month. That's June every year. And happy the first nationally designated federal holiday commemorating Juneteenth Day. Yesterday was Juneteenth, and we're all very happy about that. And happy Supreme Court Decision Day, as the US Supreme Court recently denied another request to undo the Affordable Care Act and deny affordable health care to over 30 million Americans. Now, who would want to do that? Well, the Supreme Court didn't let it occur, so that's a good thing. So many good things are going on. Fathers, I hope you are providing your children an example of our UU values on these various topics and being a liberal, progressive, and compassionate person as in our community that honors the inherent worth and dignity of everyone as we recognize these special days, events, and month. Here's a couple of notes about the service. This service is being recorded except for the joys and concerns portion and the discussion period after the service. If you want to listen to any of our previously recorded messages, they're on our YouTube channel, which is UUCLC Office on YouTube, which you can also easily access from our website. The chat box on Zoom is open. You may take some time at this early point in the service to enter a joy or concern for reading during joys and concerns. You may also take time to enter a donation into the funding link that is also in the chat box. If you have any difficulty with Zoom this morning, put a note in the chat box if you can, or wave your hand and someone will try to assist you. You're encouraged to sing along with our musical selections, but please stay muted. Now, if anyone has any announcements at this time, please wave your hand and someone from the tech team will call on you. Do we have any announcements?
I don't think so, Henry.
Okay, well, thank you, Christy. Again, welcome to everyone. If you're a first-time visitor or perhaps returning after an absence, I invite you, if you wish, to wave your hand at the camera so everyone can see you. A member of our tech staff will call on you and you may unmute and introduce yourself if you wish and tell us what brought you here today. Do we have any visitors?
No.
No visitors, all right. None that want to be recognized anyway. If we do have a visitor, we're honored by your presence here and hope you'll come again. If you're interested in receiving more information about our church, please contact us by phone or email. Our contact information is on our website, and our website is easily accessible by putting into your browser Lake County UU. That will take you to our webpage. Our guest speaker this morning is Reverend Byrd Tetzlaff with the message entitled Forgotten Lives. Byrd has been with us before and we're pleased to welcome her back. Reverend Byrd grew up in the Midwest, got her master's degree from Meade Lombard, and has served congregations in Illinois, Tennessee, Virginia, Indiana, and California. She is currently retired except for an animal ministry, an art ministry, and an occasional blog. While in California, she worked for the legalization of same-sex marriages, and during the window in California being after it became legal there, and then before it became illegal there, and finally to become legal nationwide. So while she was allowed to, she performed over 70 same-sex weddings at no cost. What a great record. Thank you very much, Reverend Byrd. She now lives in Indiana, doing art, including drawing mandalas, blogging, and feeding the birds. Reverend Byrd has opening words for us this morning.
Thank you. I believe it was John Lennon who said, "Life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans." Sadly, that's all too true, especially when we're young and starting out. We often have great plans for ourselves, and those plans are usually not what really happens. Instead, life happens, and we adjust and do what we can, often making new goals, sometimes better ones. And it's just as true for us as it was for those in the past whose history may still speak to us. Life happened, maybe not quite the way they thought it would, but they persevered. And sometimes they did great things. To light our chalice, each of us is a light, a small single light, but full of all the possibilities and hope. May we each add our light to the light of the world, that we may see our way to each other.
We make time for those who wish to offer a joy, concern, or sorrow, or to set an intention for the coming days. This portion of our service will not be recorded. When the slide comes, join me in reciting together our congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. It's now time for us all to reflect how we help continue our UU presence in this community by our financial support. I would also like to point out that our treasure, our pledges, are an essential part of our demonstration of love and help for each other in this special family. There are multiple ways to do this. They can be found in the Sunday service bulletin, the weekly bulletin, or on the UUCLC website. You can also donate from the chat box. The link is in there right now, and if you do that, thank you for your donation today.
Am I on?
Yes, you are. But
Okay,
reading by Byrd now.
thank you. I like what I know of Jesus. I appreciate the teachings of Gandhi. I am inspired by Eleanor Roosevelt. Those were great spirits. But I am willing to bet there are 100,000 or more other great souls that we have never heard of. Great spirits whose lives were quietly lived, individuals who became unlikely heroes and heroines that battled the odds, just trying to live up to their highest sense of right. People who made a positive difference in the lives of those around them. You may actually know such a person, someone who touched your life for the better, who touched many lives for the better. And if you were very close to them, you may have seen their clay feet. But I hope that did not blind you to their light. I invite you now to relax, to soften your eyes, close them if you wish. Let your shoulders go limp, your arms and legs relax. Let your breath go in and out, filling your lungs with renewed energy. We are but specks of dust, but it is stardust. Our lives are so small in the vast universe. How could they possibly matter? But maybe, just maybe, they do. The service today is about forgotten lives. Well, actually about one particular forgotten life. It's a true story, lost, however, to all but the most avid historians. What follows is a story of someone that I think should be remembered. Fanny Wright was born in Dundee, Scotland in the year 1795. When she was 3 years old, she and her younger sister Camilla were orphaned, leaving her uncle in charge of her. He was not unkind, but he was very morose and strict. Fanny reported that her childhood was devoid of laughter. When she was 18, she came into her inheritance, which was a considerable amount of money. Now wealthy and independent, she took her sister with her and moved to Dublin, where life was much brighter. Fanny enjoyed the gaiety and social aspects of society, and one of the first things she did was to join the Unitarian Church, which she adhered to for the rest of her life, although later she did write a few pamphlets against organized religion. When she was 21, Fanny read a pamphlet on the glories of America, and she resolved to see it for herself. Now, in those days, pamphlets were a big deal. They reached more folks than any other form of entertainment. Only the wealthy in large cities could see plays or hear orchestra music, and folk music was brought out only for special occasions. Pamphlets, however, reached almost everyone, regardless of station in life or location. Even the illiterate enjoyed them, because folks would read pamphlets aloud for the amusement of their listeners. And they were written on every subject imaginable, ranging from the very scholarly to the absurd. Pamphlet writing was big business, and even women could participate, although they almost always wrote anonymously. To be fair, most of the men wrote anonymously too. If you were in a certain class in society, it was simply not done to work for a living. Yet for many of them, money was needed. So pamphlet writing provided an outlet which gave remuneration. Anyway, Fanny read the pamphlet and was enchanted by the idea of America. Not one to spend her time in idle dreaming, Fanny packed up her sister and came over to tour the United States in 1818. Well, she loved it. She rhapsodized about it. She was so enamored that she started writing pamphlets herself about America, extolling its virtues, its magnificent lands, its politics, and its wonderful people. She couldn't say enough good about it, and she said it well in pamphlets that she wrote for the folks back home. She became a bestseller and added to her already substantial fortune. And the nice reviews she gave to America endeared her to the American public. She became America's darling and actually spoke in public. She was a very daring woman for her time. She was the very first female to lecture in public about social justice issues. Society lionized her, and she became the toast of the town, feted and feasted wherever she went. However, as she pointed out, in this paradise of America, there was a cancer. That cancer was called slavery. She couldn't say enough about the evils of slavery either. Well, actually, at first she didn't say anything. Then she said just a little something. Then she spoke out even more, and she noticed that her popularity dropped in direct proportion to her speaking against slavery. Surprised at that, she joined a few anti-slavery groups to discuss the problem. And to her amazement, the abolitionists had no organized plan for how to free the slaves or what should be done afterwards. They had kind of hazy ideas about the possibility of sending the slaves back to Africa after they were freed. Fanny thought that was rather short-sighted of them. She returned to Scotland with her sister, where they met with British abolitionists about the problem. And they didn't have any ideas either. But Fanny was very bright and thought maybe she could come up with something. She devised a plan. Meantime, her pamphlets were selling out, so she wrote more and made more money. She started getting today what we would call fan mail. And one of those letters was from an obscure little corner of France, from one Marquis de Lafayette. Yes, our very own Revolutionary War hero. He too held America dear in his heart and was considering one last trip to see it before he died. Would Fanny care to join him? Would she? Oh, Fanny jumped at the chance and wrote another pamphlet. She began a correspondence with the Marquis, and they became fast friends, vowing eternal fidelity and friendship to one another. This continued for some time, and then they arranged to meet. Fanny and Camilla went to Paris, where they became the reigning toasts. Fanny and the Marquis were inseparable. They went everywhere together and made a wonderful couple. Society was thrilled. They made plans to take another cruise to the New World together. Everything was all set, but just as they were about to embark, Fanny pointed out that she was a single female, and perhaps it would not be proper for them to travel alone together. She suggested they get married, or failing that, he could adopt her. The Marquis declined the honor and offered to pay the way for her sister Camilla to join them so that the proprieties would be observed. It should be noted, from that moment on, his enthusiasm for Fanny cooled somewhat, and shortly after arriving in America, they ended up going their separate ways. Fanny was still concerned about slavery. She decided to tour the South while Lafayette went north. And while she was at it, she spoke to many of the slave owners she met. To her surprise, they were quite resistant to the idea of freeing their slaves. Nothing daunted, she proposed several ideas for freeing the slaves through attrition, if nothing else. This would mean that the folks currently in slavery would stay that way, but all the new folks would be born free. Several slave owners pointed out they would not be willing to take on the expense of feeding, housing, and educated children who would not someday turn a profit for them. And besides, how would the former slaves make their way in a world when they didn't have a clue about reading, writing, ciphering, or any sort of trade? Fanny listened very carefully to what they said and started forming her own ideas, which were somewhat different than what the slave owners had in mind. You have to understand, Fanny honestly could not comprehend that one person might want to own another. It was beyond her capabilities to fathom that point. She thought if she could address the concerns of the slave owners, they would rejoice and gladly rid themselves of the stain upon their souls engendered by the ownership of one human being over another. One of Fanny's good friends was a fellow by the name of Robert Owen, who was the leader of the utopian movement. It seems that right about that time, a number of folks were flirting with the concept of starting up utopian communities. Now, the idea of a utopian community is that you try to think things out and forestall problems and then live life the way it should be lived. And all sorts of folks were trying all sorts of ways to live together. And some of those societies did indeed last for quite a while, and others fell apart very quickly. Fanny decided to start up her own community, with the idea being to free the slaves. She was convinced when folks saw how well it worked, they would send up cheers as they signed manumission papers for their slaves. And in 1825, she found a plantation that was for sale near Memphis, Tennessee. She felt it was perfect for her grand experiment, so she purchased it and renamed the plantation Neshoba, which she said was the Swahili word for freedom. She was wrong about that. There's no such word in Swahili. Unfortunately, Fanny was long on inspiration, but a little short on common sense. She failed to inspect the property before she bought it. Yes, it did have a lot of acreage, but sadly, most of it was overrun most of the time by a local river. It was, in effect, swampland. Unfazed, Fanny bought some slave families, trying very hard to keep them all together, and she hired some teachers. She freed the slaves and set about building a school for the former slaves and their children. When it was built, she invited the local poor white children who had no local school to attend. She invited them to come and sit as equals next to the former slaves as they learned their lessons. Interestingly enough, there is no record of the former slaves objecting to the situation, nor did the poor white folks. But the local slave owners were up in arms, and they did their best to shut down the school. Now, Fanny had tried to set things up so that Neshoba would be self-supporting and maybe even turn a profit, thus encouraging slave owners to try the same thing. Sadly, things did not quite turn out the way she hoped. Lack of local support made things very difficult. The swampland produced very little in the form of food or saleable crops, and the buildings were all in disrepair. Fanny was forced to put more of her money into the project. It had become a very costly dream. She didn't mind spending the money on it, but she didn't want too many folks to know about that aspect. But then she came down with malaria, and besides, her personality was not suited to be stuck in East Jimmy nowhere. So for her health, she went back to the cities in bright lights, leaving her sister and the overseer in charge while she went on the lecture circuit. She spoke about the evils of slavery and about her solutions, leaving out certain unfavorable details. In those days, women simply did not speak in public. This was 1828. Fanny probably only got away with it because she was very wealthy and a foreigner. But she was very popular and quite well paid. In part, she was popular because she said such outrageous things. She espoused very strange ideas, things like equal rights for women, abolition of slavery, the right of an Indian to own land, temperance, and, gasp, free love. Fanny was truly a woman ahead of her time. But back home at the plantation, however, things were not going so well. All the crops had failed, so they were getting hungry. the overseer had gotten her sister pregnant and then absconded with all the funds. And everyone came down with malaria from the swamps. Camilla wrote to Fanny and mentioned that things were getting a bit dire. So Fanny left the lecture circuit and went back to the plantation to set things right. But it was too late. The Shoba folded. It was simply not viable. Fanny packed up everyone, herself, her pregnant sister, all the former slaves, and her sometime companion, Robert Ullman, and muscled them off to Haiti, because it didn't seem like a real smart idea to hang around. And at least in Haiti, everyone could live free. That gesture cost her most of what was left of her fortune. Well, her sister had the baby and found someone to marry her. The former slaves lived in freedom, and some of them had trades because of the education Fanny had given them. Fanny gave up the lecture circuit because no one wanted to hear about things that failed. She married and had a daughter, and she died at the ripe old age of 57. Fanny's grand experiment failed. No one else felt disposed to follow her example, and she's almost entirely forgotten today. But to me, she's a female Don Quixote, tilting at windmills and very real dragons. She was Joan of Arc, trying to free the slaves. She really tried. She did something when everyone else merely talked about it. No one else even came close to such a concrete idea on how to accomplish freedom. She was a dreamer and a fool. Coming from a place of privilege, she was willing to spend her entire personal fortune and her health to act on her beliefs. Very few others have had such courage. At her request, her tombstone had the following inscribed on it: I have wedded the cause of human improvement, staked on it my fortune, my life, and my reputation. So be it. Annie Wright, let her light shine. She did try very hard to live up to her absolute highest sense of right. And even though almost no one has heard of her, even though most of her efforts failed, she left us a legacy to be proud of. We too leave legacies. Whether or not those who come after us know of us, we leave a legacy. Our choices matter. Our light may be singular, yet when we join it with others, who knows what we may accomplish? Let us take this light into us. Let us shine. Let us be a beacon for those who come after us. And may we inspire ourselves to be the best that we are.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Well, now this little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, this little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Well, now this little light of mine, yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, 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 every day. Wanna let this little light shine. Jesus gave his life. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave his life. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Jesus gave his life. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, every day, every day, every day now, every day, every day, every day, every day, every day. Wanna let this little light shine. Oh, this little light of mine, yes, this little light of mine, let it shine. This little light of mine, Jesus gives it to us all the time. Let it shine all the time, all the time. Let it shine, let it shine all the time, all the time. Let it shine, let it shine all the time. Oh, let it shine. Monday, the gift of love. Tuesday, he's the gift of love. Wednesday, told me to have more faith. Thursday, give me a little more grace. Friday, told me to watch and pray. Saturday, told me what to say. Sunday, gave me the power of all. This little light of mine. This little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, now this little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Now this little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, every day, every day, every day, every day now, every day, every day, every day. Gonna let this little light shine. Well, this little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Oh, now this little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Now this little light of mine. Yeah, I'm gonna let it shine. Every day, every day, every day, every day now, every day, every day. Gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
All right. See if I can get the spotlight back. That was a dynamite song that I just love.
All right.
All right. Well, even if I don't have the spotlight, I'm going to continue. Fanny, I'll say these words on behalf of Byrd. Fanny let her light shine. So everybody let your light shine too. Okay, all you fathers out there, shine for your children and shine for everyone. All right. Now, as we prepare to depart one from another, we are reminded that we're always connected. And I invite you to take your neighbor's hand virtually, as we do every Sunday, in gallery view, as we all sing our song of departure, Weave.